Well, our next guest was, when I reached out to him yesterday, I think was shocked and perhaps even disheartened to find out that it's not enough for my ego to be on the air 5 days a week during the week. I reminded him that I also had a Sunday show, was hoping that he could join us. And I think that was his question. You do a Sunday show? Yeah, I'm not proud. I know I probably shouldn't be, but it is what it is. Jack McCallum, kind enough to join us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm sheepish about it. I know it doesn't make any sense at my advanced age, but I carry on. I don't know what else to do.
What is your day off?
Saturday, technically, I guess you could say. I mean, but there are people, you know how this goes, Jack. I mean, when people say, you don't really think you work. This isn't work, do you think? I mean, you don't really believe, like my grandfathers both worked, one of them, Open Hearth number 4, U.S. Steel, Gary, Indiana, for like 40 years. So I understand there's work and there's work,
Yeah, I think there's a general assumption that people somebody once said to me, you go to a game and you watch the game. Why is that a job? For everybody else, that's a pastime.
Yeah.
But you and I know there's slightly more to it than that. But I'm just impressed. You're here on Sunday. This is the closest I'm getting to church, talking to Reverend Dan on Sunday morning.
That's it.
Here we are.
All right. So I stumbled upon, I have to admit, I had not even planned to watch the We Beat the Dream Team HBO, not because I was against it or I'm bored or tired of the Dream Team story, because we really haven't talked about it much lately on either during the week or on the weekend show. But it was one of those deals where I was surfing channels and I came upon it, and then I couldn't stop. I have to admit, I couldn't stop watching it. I thought it was extremely well done. I set up the premise last segment before you came aboard. You know what the premise of it is. And the fascinating thing I thought they pulled off pretty effectively in this thing was the debate that continues, I guess, to this day to exist as to whether it was a legitimate beating of the Dream Team in a scrimmage to prepare for the 1992 Olympic run, or something beautifully orchestrated by that master psychologist, Chuck Daly. Now, you've written on this team. You are all over. No one's closer to the Dream Team story than you. So what did you make of it? What were your impressions?
Well, my first impression, selfishly, is that anything that keeps the Dream Team subject, genre, subtext in the cultural ether is good for me, because for some reason, 13 years later, the book that I wrote on the Dream Team in 2012 keeps selling. So let me offer that first selfish thing first.
Sure.
Secondly, in answer to your question, I totally agree with you. And the adjective I would use to describe the documentary is kind of like good-natured.
Yes.
There's so much. This is such an obvious point. There is polarization every minute of our 24-hour day, and to have this sort of dialogue, this kind of controversy, quote marks, going on and talked about in a reasonable manner, I think was terrific. So that's observation number 2. Number 3 is that this was Grant Hill's baby. And I remember when I talked to Grant, when I was starting, Grant was one of the first people I talked to back in, I guess, 2010 when I was doing the book. And when I was starting research for the Dream Team book, and I ran into Grant. I don't remember how. And he was unbelievable. We talked for like an hour, and at that point he started bringing up this scrimmage. Now, I knew about it, but what you have to remember was this happened on the second or third day of practice that these guys were together in La Jolla at the University of San Diego campus.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time I was doing this book 20 years later, they had played in Portland in a qualifying tournament. Yeah. They had won the gold medal. 20 years had passed that I almost needed Grant to remind me, quite frankly, that this event had happened. So it sort of never took form in my mind when I started to read the book to the extent that it had in Grant's mind and the minds of, Chris Webber and Penny Hardaway and Jamal Mashburn and Bobby Hurley, which I understand.
Yeah.
But this has been Grant's baby for a long time. I'm really glad they did this documentary, and they did it very well.
So at the time, as they're assembling, as you said, this was early in the practice regimen. Was there any? I'm assuming you were there. So
I was there.
So was there any working knowledge of? God, I can't believe what just happened here. They had a scrimmage, and the select team, the team that would have been representing the U.S., they knocked them off. Yeah, it was a scrimmage, but hell, it was pretty competitive. It was pretty explosive. Was there any sense of that?
Yes, we walked in. You have to understand that one of the reasons I was able to make the Dream Team book work was that so much of this, first of all, it took place before social media.
Right. Yep.
This is 91, 92. That's number one. Number two, all this stuff was closed. Practices, so a kind of, there was sort of a secret net over everything. And I distinctly remember walking into the gym, the hordes that were there. I remember somebody was in the background. Could have been you. I don't know if you were covering at that time. Somebody back there went, when we went in,
Yes.
like it was cattle call. And I remember walking into the gym, and the first person I saw was Bird. And Bird was sort of honest enough to admit that things didn't go the way we planned in the scrimmage. But as it said in the documentary, the score wasn't up.
Right.
Everybody was a little vague. The select team, although they chirped about it later, was not going, hey, man, we kicked their ass. That was not happening. Certainly Magic, who was one of the main guys, talkative guys, was not admitting it. So there was a little bit of a strange nervousness to the Dream Team. But to the extent that it had ever got going, the next day, it was completely different.
Yeah.
We kicked their ass.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're together. Now we know what we're doing. So I will admit that this little thing that happened got kind of swallowed up by the larger narrative.
So one of the themes to the documentary, of course, as you said, it's all very good-natured. It really is, as you say. I think it's remarkable to that extent. Now, maybe beneath that, there might be a little bit more edge because these are competitive guys. But the one guy who sounded to me almost cruel in his approach to retelling of the story was Coach K. Coach K was like, to Grant Hill, I know you like you like to cling to these childish fantasies, and that's good. That's good. That's okay. Santa Claus, the whole bit. Because he's the guy who's the most adamant about saying, look, he trucked through the game. That game was thrown from the beginning, whereas even some of his colleagues, I think PJ included, said, I don't know about that. He may not have gotten in the way once he saw what was happening, but I didn't think it was quite that overt. So have you ever gotten a handle on that, or what were your impressions regarding the Coach K theory as to exactly why this happened, which was basically to give the kids no credit?
Well, first of all, and I'll get back to it, Coach K is wrong. But this opinion that he has had, Coach K Mike was unbelievable when I interviewed him about for the Dream Team book. I mean, he was one of my best 4 or 5 interviews. And I'll get back to your question, but he gave me one of the great anecdotes of all time. He said him and PJ show up for their first meeting with Chuck Daly. They have their notebooks ready and they got their USA basketball shirts on, and they're, what do we do? What do we do, Coach? And Chuck said to them, The first thing is learn to forget, meaning don't jump on everything.
Yeah.
Barkley screws around for a minute. Somebody, Bird drops out of a drill. Take it easy. You're not coaching your college teams. So Coach K was all over this thing. He was remarkable in remembering this. And it kind of continues to surprise me to this day that a guy that reached the heights of coaching, that how this was a seminal experience for him. And that really stuck with me a lot when I was writing the book. Anyway, this idea that Chuck threw the game, that's the exact words Mike said to me 13 years ago. That's the exact words. He threw the game. This didn't happen. And like you, I was a little surprised because if there's, to a sense that there's tension and conflict in the documentary, it's when Grant shows up at Coach K's office.
Yes.
And I would agree with you. I thought it was just unbelievable. I thought that I was surprised that Coach K came at him that strong. And I think it was probably a little window into Mike's personality.
Yeah.
This was a hard guy, man.
Yes. Hey,
we're not giving this up. Screw you. You can believe in Santa Claus if you want to. But this idea that they threw the game, in my opinion, is nonsense, and I could tell you why.
Well, tell me why.
Well, from the beginning, the great fear, the Dream Team had two fears, competition-wise. Number one, that they would, I think, probably make that three problems. Number one, that they would start missing. They didn't have the outside shooting. They had the athletes. They had Michael, they had Scotty, they had Charles, anybody. They had Malone, they had Ewing. They'd get a basket inside whenever they would want to. Number one, they would not. Some guy would get hurt them from Greece. Start making 30-foot jump shots, which is certainly what happened later in international competition. They couldn't match it. That's why they went out. Chris Mullin was one of the first picks for the team. Number two, that because of Magic's age, that they could get beat on the outside by quick guards. Bobby Hurley said it during the documentary, that little spaces that little guards could get into and cause some trouble. Number three, that they had all alpha males on the team, so who was going to sacrifice their game? Well, when they started this scrimmage, the United States did the direct opposite. The first inclination of the players was going to be to defer. That, I'm not going to be the guy to take over. I'm going to be a team player. Nobody's going to say, well, we were all together on the same page, except Drexler wouldn't pass me the ball or Michael kept hogging it. So therefore, they began this scrimmage over passing. Number one. Number two, they began it with Magic guarding Hurley, and he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to remember, this is near the end of Magic had been in the league 13 seasons by this time and was never a great perimeter defender either. Number three, they started making outside shots. They had a great, game. And before the United States knew it, they were kind of in trouble. But the idea that from the beginning, Chuck was going to throw this game is just nonsense. As it went on, yes, he took Michael out. He didn't change anything. He didn't take a timeout. He didn't go zone or something to stop the outside shooting. So he didn't do enough things to, actually win the game. And I think as time went on, Chuck did see this as a learning experience. But the idea that from the beginning they were going to throw this game, I just think is complete nonsense. And Grant is correct about that. The truth certainly lies halfway between we beat the Dream Team, we killed them, and they threw the game and let you win. The truth, as it usually is, lies somewhere between those poles.
The documentary is vague on beyond saying Jordan was pulled for significant portions because I was curious, like, well, how many minutes did he actually sit? I guess we'll never know the answer to that question, but he was out apparently enough, right, that you could argue that even if it wasn't planned from the beginning, that maybe it was Daly's way of saying, okay, well, maybe we got some here. I'm gonna test this team without, relying on the killer. I'm gonna keep the killer out of the game, but we don't really know how long he was really out, do we?
No, we don't. We don't have a box score of it. Later on, once again to make this about me, late when I found the scrimmage tape from the famous one from Monte Carlo when there was an inter-squad scrimmage. Right. I called that chapter the greatest game nobody ever saw. Mm-hmm. I actually had that whole tape, put together a box score. Oh. I had paid somebody to make a box score of it, how many minutes. Well, they were only 10 players that day. Right. So they all played. It escapes me how many minutes there were in the game. We don't have that from this game, nor do we have any video evidence that he ever put Jordan or Pippen to lock down Hurley.
Hurley, yeah.
All we see in this footage is Hurley just getting in the lane whenever the hell he wanted to. And he's going by, most of the time he's going by Irvin. He's going by Magic Johnson. So I am pretty sure from accounts we got that day and the video evidence that what Chuck could have done was watch 2 minutes of this and go, well, hell, we got to stop little Bobby Hurley from making us look like idiots out here. You put Jordan on him or Pippen on him, because later on in the Olympics, till the day he died, I remember used to talk to Chuck Daly about what he remembers from the Dream Team experience. And what he always refers to was a game against Lithuania. This is in the Olympics now. When he was a little afraid of Marciulionis, Šarūnas Marciulionis, who got in the lane and also finished. He was a terrific player. I love Marciulionis. And he told Jordan this. And Chuck would say, whenever I ask him about it, Michael kept him from getting the ball for like 6 minutes. Marciulionis couldn't get the ball, to start their offense. And they ended up beating Lithuania, which was kind of perceived to have the second best team over there. I mean, they killed them. They beat them by, I think it was, 103-73 or some ridiculous. So that's obviously what he could have done, and he did not do that during the game. However, that is not the same thing as throwing the game, in my opinion.
Yeah. We're chatting with Jack McCallum, award-winning sports writer, author extraordinaire, occasionally even a guy who, I guess I forgot this, you did occasionally have the opportunity, the assignment of writing the copy that went with the SI swimsuit issue edition. Is that confirmed, or am I making that up?
No, there was a couple times. That was not the worst assignment I ever had. We were, we were in. I went out to Maui in one of the shoots, and you're always sort of, well, what are you going to write about? You got to write about something. Yep. And my wife had come along, and we were sitting at a bar, and I, far away from the piano player, and I said, "Damn, this guy sounds pretty good, this piano player." And went up there. It was Billy Joel. So that was what I wrote about on that particular swimsuit assignment. It was not hard duty.
You must have felt like you were living good there, man, as a writer. I mean, that's just, to your credit, you walked over. You had the good ear, I guess.
I could have just motioned for another, margarita and never went to explore. But curiosity, as you know, Dan, is what makes this profession.
That's why you're the reporter that you indeed are. So another thing I enjoyed, I thought that several of the players, Dream Team players, were far more magnanimous than Coach K in saying, look, yeah, they took it to us. I mean, there's no question. I mean, they several of them did not seem to diminish that aspect of the story. Now, maybe it's easier to do that now. I don't know, but I felt it towards the end is when I think we finally heard a little bit from Michael in that regard, and he was extremely, complimentary. We heard it from Magic to a certain extent, a couple other players as well. Those
heard
are
it
the
from
ones.
Bird,
yeah,
certainly,
yeah, for sure.
That was player to player, man. I mean, there's trash talk because I remember Grant Hill telling me. I think he was the only one I interviewed for the book from the select team. And it was all, that stuff he said in the documentary about the first day they came in. And it seemed that a lot of them ran into Bird. And right away, Bird's thing was, we're just, we're going to run all over you guys. So there was that level of trash talk that goes on. And I'm going to take you over here to the corner and I'm going to shoot on you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yes.
There's that, but then there is the player-to-player analysis afterward, and none of those guys that I recall when we walked into the gym, they were all very complimentary about, those guys as players. And, I mean, hey, a number of them had great NBA careers. They recognized players. Chris Webber had a great career. Jamal Mashburn had a great career. Grant had a great career. Probably would have been better without injuries. I think Hurley would have stuck. I think Hurley had an injury in an car accident that limited his career. And it was brought up during the documentary, but this was our Olympic team.
Right.
This was going to be our Olympic team. Plus, you would have added Leitner.
That's right.
So the starting Olympic team, had the Dream Team, had FIBA not changed the rules that the NBA players could play, would have probably been Leitner, Hurley, Chris Webber, Penny Hardaway, and maybe Mashburn. And it's an interesting question as to whether they would have won the gold medal. Sorry, Grant, I'm not sure they would have. And if I was we'll never know.
Yeah.
And if I was a betting man, I'd say they probably wouldn't have, that Croatia or Lithuania might have beat them. But this was a damn good team, and none of those guys on the Dream Team was going to be small enough or stupid enough to start degrading the players. They definitely complimented them and said, we got our butts kicked. And it was a wake-up call. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I think the number one basketball thing that came out of it, beyond the motivation of, being ready to play an opponent, was we're locking this thing down from the beginning. Pippen and Jordan are going to lock down the other team's point guard, and they're never going to get into their offense. And we are going to score off a transition, and we're going to score off of defense first. And I think that is the number one. The vision of Bobby Hurley threading his way through the defense, I think stuck with everybody. And that was, I mean, they probably would have won anyway, but I think that was fairly significant outcome of that, of the famous "We Beat the Dream Team" scrimmage.
Served the purpose, I think, 100% right. The other thing I thought was interesting is that the select team players, several of them, were very open and honest about what happened to them the next day. They did not skirt over that or say, they kind of got the better of us. I mean, they were very precise in their anecdotes about just the degree to which they got taken in the return encounter. That's another thing I like about this thing is there's willingness on both sides to give, grace to the other side or to compliment the other team, at different times. Speaking to your point earlier about how, the sort of the tone throughout this thing, which is not heavy.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And in doing so, I think they were very honest about that. I had never heard. I didn't interview Mashburn, but I had never heard. Mashburn was unbelievable talking about Bird, this mythic idea of Bird. I mean, I've heard this 100 times before, and it's certainly true to a degree. But how much Larry actually said, all right, I'm, telling them exactly what he's going to do and then going out and doing it. That was noteworthy to me, because one of the things about the Dream Team through this whole process, through the practice, the qualifying, and Monte Carlo and Barcelona, was the degree to which Bird, as a player, was not that much of a factor. Larry's back, and people should remember that Larry came back and retired. The Dream Team was it. That was the last season he played. And his back was just killing him. So I was surprised myself when I saw the documentary about how much he had dominated in that second day, as you said. And the other thing about that is that in talking about how incredibly well the Dream Team played in the second day, kind of reinforces the notion for these guys how good they were the first day. This is the team. These are the guys we beat the first day. Yeah. They just clubbed the hell out of us. And I know on the second day, one of the things they did was shut down Hurley. And you think about it, you shut down a team's attack in the beginning. Where else were they? Where was the select team going to go? You usually got your one quarterback there that's going to get you into your offense. I guess they could have, Penny Hardaway ended up as somewhat of a point forward, I guess. But like I said, I think that was the basketball lesson. Let's shut this thing down at midcourt, and our abilities and our defense and our transition offense and our scorers are going to take care of it from there on in.
Who was who was Jordan talking to about you're not going to get the ball above your shoulders? You're not. Was it Allen Houston? Who was the? Do you remember?
It was Allen Houston, because I forgot about him through this whole thing. He was a major factor too. He was that guy that they worried about. Could be on the other team, whether it was Oscar Schmidt or whoever, or some guy they didn't know at this point who could have just killed them with the shorter 3-pointers. And that's who he was talking about with Allen Houston. Once again, was that myth that I can't remember who. I don't think Allen Houston said it. I think maybe Mashburn said that Jordan said to him, and you know what? He didn't get the ball above his shoulders. I don't know whether that's true or not, but it certainly is a factor and it was reflected later, Dan, in the Olympics when they went up against Tony Kukoc.
Kukoc, oh my God.
That Kukoc had been kind of, was seductively being played by Jerry Krause, the Chicago. Krause wanted Kukoc. And to get Kukoc, theoretically, they were going to have to, stop paying Pippen. Mm-hmm. So part of Kukoc's money was going to be Pippen's money. So before the game against Croatia, Jordan and Pippen got together and said, "This boy ain't doing nothing tonight." And when I did my interviews for the Dream Team story, every single person, not just Jordan and Pippen, but every single player mentioned this total assassination job that Jordan and Pippen had done on Kukoc. So if they wanted to do it to Allen Houston, and apparently they did, they were certainly going to do it. That was mission accomplished.
No question about that. I'm late as always here, but I have I told you my Chuck Daly suit coat story?
I would love to hear it because I have one also. But go ahead.
All right. Well, this one's not. I mean, it's not that lengthy, but it was some time covering NBA playoffs. I don't even know where. I honestly don't even remember where we were, but it was in the media room. And somehow, some way, I had back then we had the little laptops, whatever, or in this case, it was a Radio Shack flip top set up, okay, in position to write after the game. And I came back to note that somebody had draped a really, really expensive-looking suit coat over my chair.
You go, boss.
And
that
so
was Chuck's brand.
It probably was. So now I'm stuck. I don't know who it belongs to. On the other hand, I don't want to sit with my back on it. I feel like I might get arrested. So as I'm reaching the chair, I grab the coat to try to drape it someplace else. And I'm just starting grabbing it when I hear this booming voice to my right, "Thank you." And it's Chuck coming my way, sarcastically saying, like, "What are you going to do with my coat?" And I'm going, "Oh, I'm not trying to do anything with your coat. You put it over my chair." But it was, I'm sure that coat cost more than my entire wardrobe.
I saw Chuck's closet at his place, and this is after he retired. It was what you would think it was. I mean, a walk-in closet with and Chuck told me one time right before tip-off of a playoff game again, I don't remember, he came over to myself and David Dupree of USA Today. And right before the tip-off, he said, "Notice how the blue background in my tie exactly matches my suit," which was a blue suit. That was right before tip-off. That was I'm sure he did it to get his mind off the tension of the game.
Sure.
But that happened right before tip-off. Brilliant. That was Chuck.
That's Chuck. Nobody like him. Great to catch up. By the way, I thought the last book we talked about from you was The Real Hoosiers, Crispus Attucks High School. Have you written one since that I've forgotten about, or are you already on to the next one?
No, I'm probably working on a novel that nobody will read.
A novel?
Except my wife. She's reading it now. So no, don't have a book project right now. Just probably an unread novel that will go into the annals.
This isn't going to be like book number 24 in the Chip Hilton series, is it? This is a completely different deal? This isn't related to that?
This is very non-Chip Hilton. All right. It's a very non-Chip Hilton time here in the
that's for sure.
lower 48.
That's for sure. Thanks as always for the extended time, my friend. We'll be in touch. Thanks, Jack.
All right, Dan. Thank you.
Good. Jack McCallum, the one and only Hall of Fame award winner. He is in the Basketball Sports Writers Hall of Fame for obvious reasons. A great Dream Team historian. The documentary we're talking about is available at least on HBO. I don't know if you can get it elsewhere. That's where I saw it, and it is called We Beat the Dream Team. It is definitely worth your time.